I love flying. Oh, it's nice and smooth. Oh, it's beautiful right now. Flying with a friend, nothing better. Shit, dude, we just lost the engine.
Today, my friend Dave and I are going to hit the sky in a Cessna 152 and talk about your classic engine failure. But this is not your typical checklist demonstration. We've been talking a lot about situational awareness and environmental awareness and how those play a huge role in landing safely for a forced landing. Aside from whatever is discussed here forward, it is still very important to be familiar with the FAA regulations and your POH and your checklist.
I appreciate you tagging along. It's a lot safer to have you up here if I'm going to be making a video. Have a second set of eyes. My pleasure. Let's start talking about this airport that we fly at. We've got 8,000 feet on this runway. We're going to be taking off over a marsh. One of the biggest causes of loss of control, of course, is trying to make the runway. People trying to turn around and not being able to make it. A lot of that comes with knowing your airplane, knowing the machine that you're flying, what its capabilities are, the winds. There's a lot of factors.
In this case, 1-3, take off and you've got water and marsh to the left. And so in this scenario, if you lost the engine, then I think at 200, 300 feet, you might be able to get a little bit of a left turn, depending on where you want to land. Do you want to land in the water? Do you want to land in the marsh?
But just from a perspective, not having the experience, knowing what the airplane's capable of, how much altitude you need right now, you think you could turn around? 200 feet. No way. No way. Not in my opinion. That's 200 feet. Would you try to make that runway? Nope. No. That's 200. Let's see, 300. No, not a chance. You lose an engine right now, you're going in the marsh. Or the water. Still no. Straight ahead, you got lots of marsh. And we're approaching 500 feet. 500 feet. Now I think you might, if you're quick enough, you get that nose down. I think you might be able to do it. Yeah. But there's still the question, and we've chatted about it before. I think if there's any question, then that says to you, don't even try it. Yeah. So I think that might be a way to look at it for people who don't have the practice. If you have to think, I wonder if I'm going to make it if I try and turn back. You should just don't even risk it. Go straight ahead, and if you have to veer off a little bit, 20, 30 degrees to one side or the other, then that's acceptable. How many accidents have we heard of from loss of control from people trying to turn back to the runway and stalling, spinning in? Yeah, I mean, you need to be at least 500 feet, and this is a big runway, but even that seems a little risky. Yeah, when you don't know the airplane. Really pretty. Yeah. Nice storm in front of us. Hey, Tower 65 Bravo is mid-left and like a touch and go, and if we could, south departure after the touch and go.
65 Bravo, runway 13, clear touch and go, then southbound approved.
13, clear touch and go, then southbound for 65 Bravo, thanks. In some cases, if we're taking off the opposite direction, we have US 1, and then there's trees. Right. So you lose your engine, unless you happen to have a field right there, your best bet's going to be landing on a busy road like that, right? Well, I think, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it's, you hear about it all the time, people landing in the roads and successfully. Okay, would you rather land in the trees and tall trees or land on a road? Well, if the road's not that busy and you land with the traffic and you can manage to get in between, then many people have successfully accomplished that. But that's kind of like landing on the beach. If you got a roadway that's busy, packed full of cars, I'm not going to endanger the lives of some people on the roadway. I want to land in the trees. I think you've got a lot of cars. If you've got enough altitude, you lose your engine, and you see that you've got a good amount of space between vehicles. You go with the vehicles, obviously not against them, or even the medium. One thing to point out is things from the air look really small, and sometimes you actually do have a little bit more space than you realize once you get down to low level. And so that's something to consider. You have to consider towers, power lines. Heard many times people attempt to landing and lose the engine, and they hit power lines, and that doesn't end so well. Talk about the phrase that's been around forever: "Don't stretch the glide." You never want to try to make something. You should know that you're going to make it. It's better to be high and come down fast, right? To hit that area that you want to hit. Basically, stretching the glide was saying if you lose your engine, you see the point where you want to land.
and you're getting closer and closer. The natural tendency for newer pilots is to pull up, and that doesn't do you any good because, of course, you pull up, your airspeed is reduced, your angle of descent is increased, and your descent rate is increased, and so you're not going to make that point. Whereas if you kept that airspeed up, airspeed's your friend. That's going to give you the distance you need. But yeah, it kind of comes naturally. I lost a cylinder on a 152, on a banner toe 152, and instinct kicks in, and to keep the airspeed up. Of course, you don't want to land so fast that you're gonna, you can make the airfield, but you go off the end of the runway and run into the trees. That's what I almost did. Luckily, I didn't. But yeah, I would rather be faster than too slow, or like you said, using the example of stretching the glide.
This is a perfect example. There's a field right there. We lose the engine right now. Probably not going to make that field.
No, I don't think
We're going to end up in one of these little ponds.
Yeah, there's a good pond right there. I'd rather go on the pond than in the trees.
I'm just going to climb up a little higher and we'll demonstrate the ABC, which I really like. It's the simplest thing to remember. Airspeed, best place to land, and then checklist. So just ABC, it can be that simple. Airspeed being, as soon as that engine goes out, make sure that you are at your best glide speed immediately, and then you're looking at where you're going to land. Best glide's obviously going to give you the most air time, and then C, checklist. And the other thing about fields, and a lot of my training, is that I was always trying to look for power lines, because just because there's a field, or it's farmland, doesn't mean that there's not a power line there.
There's a good field.
Yeah, there is a good field right there. So let's say we're flying along, climbing up to 2,000 feet. All of a sudden, right here, we lose the engine. Oh God! Engine's out.
By the airplane.
Gonna go to best glide. Best glide in Cessna 152 is 56. And I'm looking around at where I want to land. I like this field a lot.
Yep.
We got plenty of time to make that. We want to run it just like a pattern. We would be on our downwind right now.
Yep.
Now I'm going to go to the checklist. All right, carb heat on. The wind direction and velocity, we got winds were from 190. But, I mean, it's just not very often that you're going to have time, unless you're really high, to figure out the winds and plan accordingly to that.
Right.
To me, this looked like a good downwind. I'm going to start turning base now. I mean, we're dropping pretty quick. Still going to go through my checklist. Mixture's full rich, fuel selector's on, primers are locked. We could check the magnetos. And we could also plan on trying to do a restart,
Right.
Yeah, I'm coming in pretty high. I've got the nose down. We still have electrical, but I can use some flaps here.
Oh, I think you'd make it.
I'm not going to go any lower than this, but
Good to me.
I've got plenty of, yeah. The other thing is like carb heat in. I have heard of cases where during a emergency landing practice, people are ready to go back up and they shove the throttle and it's actually caused a real forced landing.
Oh, right. Well, I would think, yeah, if you mash the throttle, I mean, you might be basically giving it way more air. You cough the engine. It's either a combination of too much air, too quick, is the mixture all the way in, is your, carb heat, that should be in anyway. A little airfield down there.
Oh, look at that, grass strip. Nice. We are headed toward downtown St. Augustine now, and we're going to talk about this. This is the big debate. Is it better to land in the marsh or the water? So we want to get people involved in this discussion. This is just a lot of what we have here where we fly and our environmental, and that's what I mean about environmental awareness.
Yes, the grand debate. The land in the marsh or the water. The good one. What are the factors involved? Are you going to flip over?
I would say yes, you're going to flip over either way.
Probably either way. Although there was the piper that went in, they ran out of fuel because they didn't switch tanks, I think, something like that. Off 1-3 out of St. Augustine, KSGJ. And basically right on go around, they lost the fuel lane and right in the marsh. They actually stayed right side up. But that maybe a piper is a little bit more or less conducive to flipping over. But I think at a 152, you're probably going to flip over either way.
Yeah, so again, it depends on what equipment you're flying. Maybe there's people who know more about this stuff. I've talked to examiners about it. One of them was very keen on the water's better.
Right.
Because you don't necessarily know what's in that marsh. Are there oysters?
Yep.
That could be really bad.
Well, some people that don't fly and on the coast, might think, oh, what's the big deal with oysters? Well, the piper is a good example. And they landed low tide in the marsh, and they were stuck there. Luckily, they weren't hurt. There's some bruises but they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't walk through the marsh. And if you know anything about the coastline in St. Augustine or in Florida, you're in muck and mud, and you're probably not going anywhere. And so that's one thing: is someone going to be able to get to you? And that would be one thing I think of is, okay, well, if you land in the marsh, are you close enough? Have you been able to tell anybody where you're at? Are they going to be able to get to you? It took them 2 hours to get them out of the marsh because they didn't have the right kind of boat and all that. So, if you're landing in the water, is there a boat nearby? I
mean, as far as like, is it going to be risky that you might hit the boat?
Well, if there's a lot of boats on the water, but I mean that would.
Well, yeah, I mean, like right now, and that's where you get into situational, because if it's 4th of July, a Memorial Day weekend, then does the water become more risky? But I will go through the pros and cons. I mean, the pros of landing in the water, in my opinion, are you know it's there. You know that it's water. You know that the water's smooth, I guess, would be it.
Well, here's one.
I mean, there's definitely marsh down here where there's no oysters right here. You know what I mean?
Here's one thing to consider. What kind of airplane you're flying? How many people are on board? Can they swim? If you land in the water that's deep enough, most likely, 1, the airplane's going to flip. 2, it's eventually going to sink. And you might have enough time to get everybody out before it does. You don't know how deep the water is. So do you have the right kind of equipment on board? Do you have life vests? For my tours, they're required. I have to have them. If you land on the marsh, most likely, even if you flip, you're not sinking. You're going to be on top of the marsh, and even if you flip, you're going to be able to get out. You'll be able to get on the wing and wait for help. And so that's one argument that that's one that I have, justification for landing in the marsh in certain, in a scenario.
It's a really good point. And it just depends. Like the marsh back there, especially behind us, there's this huge patch of green grass.
Right. And there's a sandbar. You might be able to get on that.
Yeah, and then the other debate I was going to say is the beach, which, how well do you know that beach? Is it state park? How do you know there's not going to be a person on it? You could try a beach, and worst case scenario, you still have time to land in the ocean.
But that's a decision, like almost a last minute decision, and I think about it flying tours. If you're flying along, lose the engine. All right, I know the state park has a lot less people on it. So let's say you make I've kind of made basically like a 500-foot decision, or 500-foot decision maker. So you get to that point, you don't see anybody. If you're at 1,000 feet, you may not see one person on the beach. So, but once you get a little bit closer, then you can see, okay, there's nobody on the beach. I'm not endangering anybody, and so I can go for it. Now you get to 500 feet. Let's say it's no official number, but you get to 500. You see people on the beach, you're going to sidestep over. You're going to swing over and land in the water. But you still have to be aware that there may be surfers in the water.
The important thing is that we think about this a lot. You should be thinking about it. You should know your environment and be prepared for the engine failure at all times. We're really familiar with this area. I think just because we've spent so much time looking at our options for where we fly.
Well, that's the thing. You're always learning. I mean, you should always be training. You should always be learning in some capacity.
Good pilots are always learning.
And looking ahead so you don't run into anybody.
And then, I've been looking out for traffic.
Well, you mentioned, to retract a little bit, you mentioned your seatbelts, and that's something that I would stress it's part of safety in flying tours, and that not just tight seatbelt, it's literally tighten it up as tight as you can.
Yeah. And then let's talk about possible reasons for an engine failure. It could change depending on your equipment, but the ones I know, oil starvation, fuel, carb ice not detected early enough, just a mechanical failure. You could blow a cylinder. You had a friend who pinched a fuel line one time. You almost had a failure because of it.
That was me.
That was you?
Yeah. I didn't pinch it. Somebody else did.
Yeah.
Found out after takeoff.
Post-maintenance, did it just have a recent annual? If your airplane just had a recent annual, stay in the pattern for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about that the other day. Any maintenance that's done on the airplane, make sure that the airplane's been test flown by the mechanic or by a designated pilot. Not that that's going to happen in a post-maintenance flight, but at least you're assured before you fly any passengers that the airplane is airworthy. You can tell the airport. Most airports are more than willing to work with you. You just tell them we're doing a post-maintenance flight and we'd like to fly. If it's class Delta, for instance, they'll give you a higher altitude above the traffic pattern, and you just do straight out, climb up to, say, here you climb up to 1,500 feet, circle, make sure everything's good to go for, you know, maybe 15 minutes, and then you're good.
Good stuff. We've covered a lot.
Tower 6 flat, Bravo, report midfield right downwind runway 13, information X-rays current now, the altimeter is 2995.
Put a mid-right for 13 for a full stop for 65 Bravo.
And I'd like to go over some more emergency talk. And I haven't seen anyone really talking about environmental and situational awareness, which is kind of a big deal.
Right.
All right, thanks for flying with me.
For taking me. I don't know if anybody learned anything, but
Yeah.
good practice.
5165 Bravo, South Signal, ground via Bravo 22 ramp.
Bravo 2 ramp, thanks, 65 Bravo.
Emergency landings are a tough subject to think about, but the reality is the more prepared that you can be, the better result.